Hi, welcome to this video about seventh chords and inversions, how to identify them, build them, and understand them. So we're starting with a root position chord. Root position chords are very easy to spot visually because they have the root in the bottom of the chord, and we can tell that because root position seventh chords have all their notes equally spaced, all on a line, or in the case of a chord that begins on a space, all on a space. The lowest note of that seventh chord, it will be the root of the chord. In this case, we have a C in the root. We have no sharps or flats, so we know that this chord is a C major 7 chord. And we would say that this chord is in root position. But what happens when we take that root and we put it up an octave, as we've done here? The root is now up an octave. It's still there, but that reveals that the lowest note is now an E. Now I've put an E in the bass clef of this example too to help you hear the difference in sound. So I'm sort of doubling the lower note here. So this is an E and this is also an E. So this would now be called a first inversion because the notes have been inverted one time. The chord has been manipulated one time. And now the third of the chord, the E, is in the bass, and it sounds a little bit different. So here was the other chord. Here's the new chord. And the way we label it is different. It's no longer just C major 7. It's now C major 7 over E, the note E. And the analysis of it is now 1 major 7 over its third. And notice we list the chord with a Roman numeral, but we use an Arabic number for the note, the single note of a third. And then this is called a first inversion because it's been changed once. It's been inverted once. And if we do it again and we bring that third up an octave one more time, we get this structure. And this is now C major 7 over G, because G is now the lowest note. G is the third of a major 7, of the C major 7 chord. I'm sorry, G is the fifth of the C major 7 chord. So now we label it as 1 major 7 over 5. And it's been manipulated twice since its root position phase, so it's a second inversion. And that second inversions always have the fifth in the bass. And finally, we're going to invert it one more time. Why don't you pause the video, see if you can figure out what the next structure would look like and what it would be called. Okay, we're back, and if you got this answer, you are correct. We now have a B, the seventh of the chord, in the bass. We brought that G up an octave. That is now a C major 7 over B. It's a 1 major 7 over its seventh, and it's a third inversion because it's been manipulated 3 times since its original root position shape. Now, there's a couple of generalities we can learn about chords from this examination. First is that root position will always have the root in the bass, and it will always look very symmetrical. A first inversion will always have the third in the bass, and it will not be symmetrical. None of the rest of them will be symmetrical. And the second inversion will have the fifth in the bass, and the third inversion will have the seventh in the bass. One more thing in terms of spotting seventh chords, and this is perhaps the most practical and useful thing I'm going to say in this video, is the location of the root can be identified by correlating it to the way it looks on the page when inverted. And what I mean by that is that the root will always be in a clump with one other note. It will always be the upper note of that clump. By clump, I mean a second. When a seventh chord is inverted, it will always form an interval of a second somewhere in the chord. And the upper note of that second will always be the root. Okay, so there it is there, and there it is there, always a C. Okay, using this information, you can identify the root of a chord very quickly, and then you can rewrite it if you need to figure out what the chord is. Let's try that in the next phase of the video. Oh, but before I do that, let's just listen to the way these chords sound one after the other. Here's the same thing again with a bass note added in like a bass guitar to make it even more obvious. So as the inversion proceeds up, it becomes sort of a weaker sound, a less definitively um, resolved sound, the way a root position chord sounds. So why would you use inversions? Well, that's a big topic, but essentially for voice leading purposes, to create stepwise motion in the bass, to create alternative versions of chord sounds while still retaining the essential essence of the chord. You can create a different sounding version of that same chord. For example, can you figure out what's happening in this progression here? Here it is again with drums. Do you agree that it's effective? There's something effective about that. What do you think is creating that effectiveness? Does it sound like a progression? See if you can pause the video and name all these chords. Okay, we're back, and if this is your analysis, you are correct. 1 major 7, 1 major 7 over its 7th, A minor 7, 1 major 7 over its 5th, and 4 major 7. And what, of course, that allows us to do is create a stepwise bass motion down to the 4 chord, which I think you'll agree is a very effective progression leading to the 4 chord. So this is one of the many ways in which inversions can be very, very useful to us. The final level would be to have the bass actually hook up with the drum part.